Hey, Susan Ragsdale from Right Creations Group. I am back with Ed May, and we're continuing our conversation about puppetry, and specifically when we want to look at how it might be a really good tool for the youth work field. And so that's my starting question with you. Is it a tool for education? Is it something people should consider? Tell us why.
Definitely. Yes. Well, basically because puppetry is probably the most effective educational tool that's ever been created in the history of mankind. And I say that because if you look at the origins of puppetry, it's been used for at least 4,000 years to educate. One of the oldest records we have of puppets being used is back in ancient Egypt, and they were used in religious ceremonies, and they were used to educate about the religious practices of their day. And that
I did
actually,
not know that.
yeah, I mean, that's really the oldest. They were figures on rods that were used to grind corn. And it was part of the Egyptian funerary rites. You know, you put the the little figures that would care for the people in the afterlife. You'd put them in with the tombs. Some of them were movable. And so that was, what they would do. And so they were movable figures. They were basically a puppet representing, the character or the person that would take care of the person in the afterlife. And then all through history, we talk about church puppets now, but actually puppets have been used in religion for, like I say, thousands and thousands of years. Here's a little factoid for you. You know, puppets that are on strings are called marionettes.
Right.
We call them marionettes because they were very popular in the Middle Ages, used in church services to tell passion stories, to tell stories from the Bibles, and they were called Little Marys, marionettes. That's kind of where we get, Little Mary. That's where we get the story or the word marionette from. So yeah, we've used puppetry for generations, or for, I should say, thousands of years, to tell our most important cultural identity or religious ceremony or whatever was really important for our culture to pass on. We've used puppetry to teach that. So yes, it's extremely appropriate these days to spread any kind of education, something that's really important. Yeah, do it through the medium of puppetry.
I know a friend of mine, and I don't know if you know much about this side, uses puppets as part of therapy.
Yes.
For young people to express, or adults, I guess, but primarily young people, to express what they're feeling and to tell their story and to kind of put it outside of themselves, just as part of therapy. And
that's important as well. And they can be used two different ways like that. The therapist or the person that's working with them can use the puppet, and the child a lot of times will feel more comfortable speaking to a puppet, because a lot of times, depending on the character of the puppet, and there have been studies that show this, a child will see a puppet as a peer instead of the authority figure of an educator or the authority figure of a therapist. So they may be reticent to share something with a therapist because they are an authority figure, but they're more relaxed around a peer, and they see the puppet as a peer. Yeah. They can also use it for the child to express things through the puppet, because when you perform a puppet, oddly enough, it becomes, even though you're the one performing it and making it say things and making it act a certain way, it is very detached. It becomes its own separate thing. So I can say things with a puppet or through a puppet that I may not feel comfortable saying myself, but the puppet can say it because that's really not me. That is now a different, separate entity. That is why a lot of times, and you see a lot of puppeteers do it, say things that they would never say themselves, but the puppet can get away with it. A lot of people will accept a puppet saying something that they would never accept a person saying, because it's sort of the separate, different entity. And so it gives you a lot of freedom, both if you're the therapist or if you're the person that's sort of going through the therapy. You have that separation.
And that fits with what we talk about in our work as a third thing. That, if I come to you and go, so Ed, tell me about how things are going at home. I know it's been rough. And I'm getting, and I'm in your space or giving you that laser look. You're like, I don't want to share. But for us, a third thing, whether that's playing basketball or putting together a puzzle or drawing or Play-Doh, all of that stuff puts the attention elsewhere, so it's not as intimidating and it creates a safe space.
Right.
So I think the puppet's doing that.
And especially even if basketball or clay or something like that, the creative, something physical or something creative where you're doing something also is great for relieving some tension. It's a great way to take out some tension. It's a great way to manage your stress. Even if it's not something at the moment you're stressed about, it's a good way to manage stress. I mean, there's a lot of studies for that as well. The creative arts are great for mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I can see how using those at the same time would be a great benefit.
So if I'm a youth worker or I'm an educator,
Mm-hmm.
what are some simple ways that I can incorporate puppetry into what I'm doing? Do I have to go and learn this whole new skill myself? Are there simple ways to do it? Do I call you? I mean, but really, what are some simple ways to start?
It's incredibly easy to start. You don't need anything very elaborate. You don't need anything very sophisticated. All you need is a thing to be a puppet. And I'll show you my puppet Manfred. And you don't need anything even as sophisticated as Manfred.
You call me sophisticated. Great.
Yeah, you don't need something like this, but something very simple. Something simple like this, because he is so, for lack of a better term, generic, it's easy for whoever looks at him to identify with him. He's not a specific character, is why he doesn't have ears, he doesn't have a nose, he's very simple, he's very easy to relate to. So yeah, something very simple. It could be something easy. I actually brought this as a prop. It could be something as simple as something like this.
Oh,
So this is just a block of foam with a mouth cut into it. Now, this is probably not what you'd want to use to start out with, but you can use something very simple like this. I usually use this when I'm doing a workshop with teachers, educators about the power of puppetry, because what I'll do is I'll start talking about puppetry, and as I talk, I'll have the puppet's mouth move here, and I'll slowly separate myself and the puppet. And after about 3 minutes of doing this, everyone's looking at this featureless thing moving. Nobody's looking at me anymore. So that sort of shows how attention grabbing the puppets can be, and even being very simple. So find a sock, find a couple of, buttons, find some pieces of foamy sheets you cut out in a circle, find some ping pong balls and stick it on, and that can be your puppet. Or find a stuffed animal, pull the stuffing out, put your hand up in it, and that can be a puppet. And there are a lot of commercial puppets you can buy as well. The thing you want to do is you want to make that puppet its own character. You don't want to necessarily, it's me talking with a puppet on my hand. I'm talking to this character. The way it's going to be effective is that the puppet can make mistakes. That creates a safe place for students to make mistakes. The puppet can have questions. That also opens up a safe space for the student to have questions. One of the most effective ways to use puppetry, though, is, let's say we're learning our ABCs, and we are working on it, we're working on it, and the puppet just can't get it right. We can't get it right. Eventually, at some point, the students will take it upon themselves to teach the puppet the ABCs. And that's when learning really happens. The students have now become the teachers to the puppet, and they have to grasp the concept. They have to know the ABCs in order to be able to teach it to the puppet. That's when they've taken ownership of the information. And you can do that with anything. You do it with ABCs. If you're trying to learn the times tables, teach it with a puppet, and they can teach the puppet. I go so far as to say there is no subject you cannot teach using a puppet. You can teach the ABCs. I have a feeling, and I've never done this because I don't know enough about the field to begin with, you could teach calculus with a puppet. You could probably do compounded interest with a puppet. You could probably teach, the succession of the kings of England with puppets. Anything that you want to teach, I think puppetry is going to be a great medium and a vehicle to get that information across to whatever group you're speaking to. Well, but I am biased. I understand that. But I do, again, like I said, because we have such historical anecdotal evidence to show that's how we got information out to people for so many thousands of years. And now we have empirical scientific studies that say teaching, even, and people think, well, of course I'll teach something like math, or not math, I'll teach English, or I'll teach the arts, or I'll teach literature. And that is true. But there is a study where a group, I want to say in the Netherlands, taught kids nanotechnology using puppets.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, you can teach pretty much anything you want to teach using a puppet.
And like you said, you started out in kindergarten, rules in the library. I saw online the other day teaching, washing your hands and all that stuff for the COVID thing to kids in camps and all of that. So multi-use.
Yeah, and it can be hard skills, soft skills, something like manners. How do we say please and thank you? Or it can be, there's a company that, and I forget the name, I apologize, but they actually do puppet shows and videos for kids in regions where there are still landmines. how not to
Oh, wow.
walk on landmines, how to stay away from things like that, how to have good hygiene and good, sanitary practices in places where it's hard to find clean water. And they use puppetry to teach that. And I apologize, I can't think of the company's name, but they do a lot of stuff with, places where finding clean water is a challenge. And, there are landmines from conflicts, and they use the puppets to teach kids how not to, be in that situation.
Well, you mentioned the last time we talked that you have done a work with a lot of different places that are familiar. Do you have a favorite story from one of your experiences?
Oh dear.
Something
I have lots of
funny or went awry or...
Oh dear. Actually, okay, I do have one story that I'll tell you. I worked on Muppets from Space, which was a Muppet film, came out in the 90s. And I worked on that, loved it, shot in North Carolina, and I was on most of the entire shoot. It was a dream come true, actual dream come true, because I got to perform characters that I can point to and say, I did that, that's me. There's if you watch the movie, and everybody should go watch it because I still get residuals if you watch it. So please just at least rent it a couple of times. But if you watch the scene at the end when they're all on the beach looking at Gonzo, when you see Animal, the scene right here, that's Animal the whole time. So I'm performing that, which is like, but I got to do some characters that actually made it on screen. And we were actually shooting that scene. And as I think I said in the other one, all the sets are raised up. So the extras, the people stand on the raised part of the sets and the puppeteers are on the floor. So when you raise your hand, you don't have to scrunch down. You're standing full height. So I was going to get on a ladder to climb down into the pit. I stepped on the ladder went that way, and I start doing a swan dive 4 feet onto the floor.
Oh no.
And they talk about how the time stops or slows down. It did. It was like I had all this time to think about these things that I was doing. Somebody was trying to help me down, and so when I started to fall, they grabbed my arm, and I couldn't pull my arm in front of me to stop myself. So I'm doing this. And as I'm going down, I think I'm going to break my teeth, or at least my jaw, on the concrete because I'm leading with my chin.
Oh, no.
And right as I think that, I feel somebody grab my chin and lower me to the ground.
Oh, wow.
And my stomach hits the ground. I went, huh! But I was fine. I wasn't hurt. I was embarrassed. I was full of adrenaline. I was like, I'm wired now. But I was fine. And the guy who caught my face was Steve Whitmire, who used to perform Kermit the Frog.
Oh, wow.
If not for Steve Whitmire, I would have fewer teeth and probably a weird, scar, or at least a messed up chin. So yeah.
And he knew. He'd been around puppets, so he knew.
It like grabbed everybody else, and again, somebody was trying to help me by holding my arm, and so I was like, I can't pull my arm in front of me, and he grabbed my chin. So yeah, that's one of the weird things that I have an experience with.
I bet you weren't the first person to fall that they knew to do.
That's entirely possible as well. I said, yeah. I said, but you realize from now on, you guys are crawling into a pit, you're going to say, remember that time Ed May fell into the pit? We almost, fell in people. So yeah.
So can you bring Manfred back for a second?
I can. Manfred.
For the question.
Manfred, come here. She would like to ask you a question.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, Manfred.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am just dandy.
So, do you feel
You laughed when I said dandy. What does that mean?
It doesn't mean nothing. Just ask the question.
So do you feel like your voice is heard? A lot of attention has been given to the puppeteers, but you're something different. Do you
I appreciate that question on a very deep level because nobody ever asks about the puppet. They just want to know about the puppeteer. They don't care anything about me. I'm just the performer, the guy who's actually out here sweating to death doing the stuff, putting forth the effort. These guys get all the praise and the glory. That's not true. There's no glory for a puppeteer. Anyway, yes, I would love to answer any of your questions about being a puppet.
Are you well treated?
I am treated. I'm treated very well, Susan. No, I have no complaints. Everything's fine. We'll talk later. We'll talk when he's not around. I'll tell you. I got the stories I could tell you. Yeah, oh my God.
So do you get to hang out with other puppets, or are you always alone?
No. They actually, Ed's company, Runaway Puppet Theater, has several different puppets. And so I get to hang out with a lot of puppets. But Ed uses me in a lot of personal appearances when he goes out or when he talks to families and things like that. A lot of times I am the character he takes. So I actually get a lot more time out away from the studio than some of the other characters do.
Well,
so, but I have a great time. I like to go out and talk to people and do things. My voice has changed. They talk about how characters evolve. My voice used to be more like this. when I would talk, but he found out I was too slow. So now I just talk more like this. I don't know why I thought to bring that up, but I did.
Do you have a favorite moment? Like, were you really connected with a kid or an adult, or, you know?
There was a show we did a few years ago where I was the lead character. And in the show, I played myself, and I played Hercules, and I played Robin Hood, and I played Pecos Bill. And at the end, there was a little girl who was almost 7, she said. And she was, after the show, and she said, I loved it, I loved it, I loved it. Oh my gosh, I loved it. And I was like, all right, that's good.
Did you get a raise?
Happy. I'm sorry?
Did you get a raise?
Yes. They doubled my pay. Oh, let me tell you. So I have a story about my first payment for a professional puppet show. When I was 8 years old, I got paid for being a puppeteer. My mom hired me to do a puppet show for her, like a ladies club for Christmas time. I was paid $5 a comic book and a hamburger.
Nice.
Yes. He was a professional. And these days he gets $8 a comic book and a hamburger.
How long have you been with them, Manfred?
You know what? I have been here since they started the company about 10 years ago.
Okay.
So I am at least 10 years old. At least.
That's great.
How old are you, Susan? Never mind. I won't ask.
We'll talk later.
All right.
You can't take them anywhere, can you?
No, well, not twice.
Anyway, I was going to tell you something else, and I forgot what it was.
What's hardest for you in doing this work?
The hardest for me?
Yeah.
The fact that he's always this close. I'd like to be able to do my own thing once in a while, be on my own, but no, he's always like right there, or like down there, or somewhere close by. I'm never alone, Susan. I never have time to myself. I never have time to myself. You know what it's like. You have a dog and you're married. I understand.
I do.
Yeah. Don't have a moment to myself.
All right. Well, Manfred, I just wanted to give you a chance to, to say something.
And I appreciate it, Susan. That was very kind. Nobody ever talks to the puppet.
It was very lovely to meet you.
It is absolutely lovely to meet you. None of these stories he told me about you are true, apparently.
Oh, and what stories are those?
I'll let him explain later.
Goodbye. Well,
Ed, that's what I say. You can say things to the puppet you'd never say. I would never say that to you. But Manfred.
Are we sure about that, Ed? I kind of think you would say something.
Yeah, okay, you got me. Yeah, okay.
Well, where can people find you? Remind them.
Yeah, people can always check us out at our website, runawaytheater.com, and see some pictures of past shows and get a synopsis of some of our repertoire. They can go to our YouTube channel, runawaytheater.com, and they can see a couple of snippets of promos of some of our shows. And then, of course, we're on Facebook. Look for Runaway Puppet Theater there. Try to be fairly regular with posting things that we're doing or other puppet-related news I find. And, yeah, keep up with us those ways. Love to hear from folks, and please like us, engage with us. We'd love to talk to you more about puppetry and also how you can use puppetry in an educational setting, because we've got lots of ideas. Actually, not to toot my own horn, but I have been invited to do a TED Talk about puppetry, using puppetry in education. So that will happen in October, and then eventually it'll be out for everybody in the world to enjoy or criticize.
Hey, maybe we'll talk again after that, just to
that would be great
and see how it went. Well, I hope you guys liked this and had as much fun as we did, because we had fun. So like, subscribe, share this with others. See if you can get Manfred to come visit you or tell you how to make other puppets. And if you get Manfred, you have to get Ed. So yeah,
we're kind of a package deal. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Ed. Appreciate you being on here.
Thanks for asking me. I appreciate it very much. It was great.
Have a great day.